Welcome to the West Point Lake Update. I'm Rocky Millenbein, Park Ranger for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers at West Point Lake. On today's show, we will be speaking to Tracy Martin about a unique event that takes place each year at the lake. We will also speak to Jill Sestino about the Upper Chattahoochee Riverkeepers and about the new office that has opened here in LaGrange. So stay tuned, we have much more to come.
Hi, welcome to Whitetail Ridge Campground. My name is Dan, this is my wife Christy. We are the smallest and most quaint campground on West Point Lake. We have 58 campsites here. All of our campsites have water and electric. We have shower houses that are nice and clean. We have laundry services. We have the best view of West Point Lake anywhere on this lake. On 4th of July weekend, off of our shoreline, you can see the best view of the fireworks from anywhere on the lake. And as you can see here, we've got life jackets that we loan out to all our guests, and all you have to do is bring ID up here. And we'd like to see everybody come here to Whitetail Ridge Campground and visit us.
Welcome back. With us now we have Tracy Martin, race director for the West Point Adventure Race. Tracy, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And the Adventure Race it's a really unique race that that you put on every year at the lake. And how did this lake evolve? How did it begin, and what was the purpose for it?
Well, there were a few of us that really enjoyed mountain biking. Was kind of a fairly new sport, and we wanted to seek out some trails. And so we would travel to Atlanta and other places to mountain bike, and then we heard about these adventure races. So we would travel around and be in these adventure races, which is mountain biking, trekking, and kayaking. And then we realized that here we have plenty of land for some trails, and we of course have the river and the lake. So we decided we'd do one here for a fundraiser, and that was 6 years ago, and we've done one the same time every year since.
Yeah, there is an extensive set of mountain bike trails at West Point Lake now, and I know you also, like as you said, you go use the riverfront along between the lake and the city of West Point. So
right.
You take advantage of all that natural land and trails.
Right. When we first started, there weren't any mountain bike trails, and so we had them on old logging roads, and they would just race up and down the logging roads. And then when we saw that it was a popular thing, and mountain biking in particular was getting more popular, we started making our own trails ourselves, and we were not very good at it. And then Sorba and the Corps stepped in and helped us make some real mountain bike trails, and now there's a good bit of trails out there, and I think they're constantly thinking how to add more and increase the mileage loop, and they've done so. It's really some of the best in the Southeast now. Yeah,
Sorba, they did a great job working on the trails, and we're happy to be able to partner with them and you guys to put things like this on, to have the opportunities for people to come out. Now, the Adventure Jam, I know it is a fundraiser race. What exactly are you raising money for?
Well, a few years back, probably about 6 years ago, West Point was giving a tract of land, 170 acres, which is just south of the Corps land, and we were giving it to it as a city trust, and it's a natural place to just develop trails and that kind of thing. And really the agreement is that we wouldn't develop that land, but that it would be used for like a natural river park. And so to put in trails and get the right kind of signage and just to make it user-friendly, it takes a little bit of money. You've got to have bridges and really good signs and a little bit of engineering for some of the different overhangs and that kind of thing. So we raise money to develop this 170-acre land. And so we have the adventure race, even though it's out at the lake, the money goes to the river park.
Yes, and there's really is a lot to going into creating a successful bike trail.
Yeah,
like you said, there's bridges, there's signage, and because you don't want to just send people out there to where they're going to be just jumping over logs and such as that.
Right.
And there's a lot of safety involved with that.
Yes, and we've had people get lost. And so we say, go to the Corps land, go to the West Point Lake and ride those trails. They're ready, and they're fantastic. They're really some of the best trails I've been on. And then we say, and ours is on its way. It's not quite user-friendly yet, and if you really know what you're doing and you know how to read a map and that kind of thing, you can go out and ride the river park trails as well. But it's not quite ready for probably the general public yet to use all that land.
Well, and that's what the race is for.
That's why we're raising money. That's
exactly.
Right. That's right.
And when I think of the adventure race, it's not your typical race. You know, it's much different than what people probably expect, different activities and such as that. What's part of a typical adventure race?
Well, I think that it originated from team building concepts, when a lot of corporations or businesses would go out and work as a team, like on ropes courses and that kind of thing. And that tended to be a kind of a trend. And so they took that and the mountain bike trend and kind of put that together. So most adventure racing, or it's supposed to be teamwork. And it originated as teams of 3 working together to complete a course. And it's not just racing and trekking and kayaking, but it's also some mind games or mind puzzles, some map reading, and several adventure races have orienteering, but that's a more advanced category, and we like to keep ours as beginner friendly because there's a lot of people around here that are just starting it.
Yeah, and you said, you know, like kind of the mind teasers and such as that, and the great thing about this is I know you come up with different things every year.
It's really fun.
And it keeps the people on their toes.
Yeah.
So what are some examples, like what did you guys do this year as opposed to in past years?
Well, this year we had where you had to travel down the river in your boat, and sometimes you had to get out of the boat, but you had to collect numbers that were hung along the river on limbs and that kind of thing on wooden placards. And you had to travel down, and the numbers were in a sequence according to the directions that you were given. And you couldn't write down the numbers. You had to memorize as a team. You had to memorize the sequence of numbers. And then when you got off the river, you had to say what that code, we called it a code, that code of numbers was. And so many people still remember the numbers because they kept saying it over and over along the way. And it was a memory exercise. But also we've had things that would simply say your team must complete 10 push-ups at the same time, but only one team member's feet can be on the ground. So they had to get creative. Some would stack up their bodies and do push-ups. Some would find a fence or a railing or something like that. So it's more of building the team concept together. Yeah,
and it's completely different than our normal like triathlon type things like that. And the fact that people can remember to do these exercises because these folks, they're doing a lot. The race generally takes a good 3 hours or so. Am I correct in that?
It's supposed to be 3 to 4 hours, and sometimes it can be longer. But it's more of an exercise in survival, where when you're really tired is when you don't think as clearly. And it's the mind discipline of slowing down, even though you're tired, and putting together a mind puzzle and then starting back up. And it's a great way to work out your mind as well as your body, which is the concept.
Yeah, and this year, you know, we already had the race and we had beautiful weather for it.
It was so pretty.
And it was a success. From my point of view, it looked like a great success. What did you think about it?
It was a huge success in that I think it's the best race that we've done out of 6 races. The course was perfect. It flowed well, and the volunteers knew what they were doing, and there were no mistakes. I wish we had had more teams. We had 25 teams of 3, and in the past we usually have 30. That's not a big difference, but for me, I would have liked to see more because I know the people that come have usually come back. The second weekend in September is a hard date to be, and a lot of people were at the Auburn game and other games, and that's fine. But I wish we had just a few more teams, but we added a solo division just to get more people to come, and then that was a success. We had 15 solo racers, which is good for a solo division.
Sure.
I've been to a lot of races where there's maybe 7 or 8 solos, so 15 is a good number. And that is where we got several people from Fort Benning to come over for like a half day. They came over for fun, which tells you what kind of guys and girls those are at Fort Benning. They came over just on a whim to go
4 hours of riding and swimming. Yeah, let's do it.
So they came over for fun and did that, and that way they don't have to worry about having a team. They can decide at the last minute to come over and compete, and several did.
Yeah, and you mentioned Columbus and Fort Benning. You've pulled folks in from there. Where are some other places that you brought people in from?
Well, when we started the adventure racing, I told you that some friends of mine we'd go to Winder, Georgia, and there's a lot of people from Winder, Georgia, and Dothan, and just north of Atlanta where there's mountain biking trails. We had 3 teams from Auburn, and I would say most of them came from Atlanta, the Atlanta area. We had a team from LaGrange, and then we probably had 4 teams from the Valley area, which is West Point, Valley Lynette.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are plenty of people in the LaGrange area that would really enjoy taking part in this race, so we need to get those people in here.
We need to get them
as well.
They would really enjoy it, and it's not a huge commitment if you're already in shape. It's not a huge commitment. It's like half a day is what I call it. And it's a half day that you will talk about for months. And it's just a choice. You've got to get up and be ready to, make some sacrifices that Saturday in September. But when you show up and you race, you never regret it.
Yeah,
you never regret it.
And maybe that's the thing that people need to gear themselves to get into race shape.
That's right. Yeah, a lot of people do use that goal. I know that, and it works.
And really, what I found amazing is the age groups, the different. This was a very taxing, very. Really get into doing a lot of different things. And I saw one young man that was probably in his early teens as opposed to folks farther along in life.
Yes, there's a team called Geriatric Jammers that have done the race every year. They hadn't necessarily completed the race as a team, but at least 2 of the members have completed it every year. And I think they're 65. One of the members may be 66, but they're 65 years old, and they do everything that everybody else does, all the mountain biking on crazy trails. Some of them are crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And they do all the kayaking, which is, you tip over a good bit in the river when you're trying to move back and forth with 3 people. It's different. And they do all the trekking, and they actually did a great job this year. And then we did have our first 13-year-old. We usually have 16-year-olds, but we had a 13-year-old this year, and he did really well. Really well.
Yeah, I remember thinking, wow.
Wow. And he had to do
blown me away
archery.
at this.
Yeah. We had some archery. He had to memorize that sequence of numbers on the water all by himself. He had to do everything that all the teams did together, and he's 13. So it was very impressive. Of course, his father won the solo division, so he has watched the best and
He's
learned.
maybe got it in his blood a little bit.
I think he does.
Well, you mentioned the archery, and that's just another aspect of this race that's different. Kind of take us through the race. I know there are so many different things that they do. I know they start off running? Or?
The basic race format is, and the way it's been every year, is you have a challenge at the very beginning that's going to get the faster teams on the trails, because you don't want to be backed up on a trail when you're racing. So we had a sprint challenge in the beginning where they had to throw a biodegradable paintball at a rock. Once it hit the rock, you could see the orange paint, and that meant you were ready to go. So you had to sprint and get the paintball. So that kind of broke up the teams. They get on the trail, and this year they ran 3 miles. It's not always 3 miles, but this year they ran 3 miles to their canoe. They get in the canoe, and they traveled a mile down the river and then a mile back up the river, and before they've gone about a mile across the lake and back across the lake. And then they did the sequence of numbers. They got off, and they ran again, and then one of them had to swim, and 2 of them had to read a map and find a point.
Okay.
Once they collected the information at that point, they came back together as a team, and then they ran 2 more miles and got to the bikes where we started, and then they biked the whole loop. It's 9 miles of mountain biking. And then at the end, they had to, I'm a fitness instructor, so I really wanted to see, some of these mountain bikers tend to not like to run. And they also wear those shoes that you can't run in. But I wanted them to get off their bikes at the end and have a very short run. A lot of them took off the shoes and ran barefoot, but I wanted to see them use their legs after getting off the bike and off a canoe and off a run, to use your legs. And that's just general fitness to me, to show that you're not cramping up or whatever at the end. And so they had to run a little bit at the end.
Yeah.
And that was it.
And that's quite an experience. Did you say that's it? That's quite a bit.
That is a lot. And they did shoot archery along the way. I forgot about that.
Yeah, but everyone that does it, they love it.
They do love it.
That's the big thing about it. And what can our viewers do to get involved for next year?
Well, I would go ahead and start looking at the website, which is West Point Adventure Race, westpointadventurerace.com.
Okay.
And see what date we pick for next year. We are truly, the interest is very strong, and it's really more of the date. It's been hard for some people to make. We may change the date in September as opposed to the second Saturday. But I would look and see when the date is, and then start 3 months out to find your teammates, and then start training for it, much like people would do for a triathlon or any kind of goal that you want to set. But this is going to be fun. This is not like an independent training thing like a marathon.
Yeah.
This is going to be something you get with your team about, and one day y'all might go canoe on the lake, which you would really not do.
Which is a great opportunity anyway.
Yeah, which is a great, it kind of makes you get outside and enjoy the outdoors. And I like that it's all off-road. When I was a little girl, I was a tomboy.
Okay.
And I didn't ride my bike on the road. I rode over, probably like you did, over ditches and hills, and you don't do that when you're a grown-up. And this gives you the perfect excuse to get a mountain bike, and they're not that expensive anymore. They were, and to ride on some dirt. It's just fun.
Sure.
And get on the lake and
get outside.
Get
Exactly.
outside.
Get outside, exercise, do something that's good, not only enjoyable, but good for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Tracy, thank you so much for being with us, and stay tuned because we have much more show to come. Welcome back. With us now we have Jill Sestino. She's with the Upper Chattahoochee River Keepers, and you're actually the Regional Outreach Manager.
Yes, that's right.
Jill, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for asking.
And as I mentioned, you're with the Upper Chattahoochee River Keepers, and you're a friend of the show. You've been on before, and but let's remind people what exactly the Upper Chattahoochee River Keepers. What's your mission?
Okay. Well, we are a nonprofit environmental group that looks after the Chattahoochee, and we do that starting in Helen, Georgia, which is North Georgia, all the way down through Harris County, where the river Columbus at Harris County. That's our jurisdiction, and that's about 4,000 square miles that we look after. And our mission is just to provide clean water that's plentiful, that flows, and that people can enjoy for recreation as a clean drinking water resource.
Yes, and the Chattahoochee River is such a huge amenity for this area, you know, and it's very important to keep it protected, to keep it pristine for future generations, and that's why groups like the Upper Chattahoochee River Keepers are so important to this area.
Yes, and we, part of our mission, the reason that we got started is because it was a family that had grown up on the river and loved the river in Atlanta and saw that the river was just out of control, polluted, and people couldn't enjoy the river for the recreation or the wildlife. And so they started the River Keeper organization, and that was about 20 years ago, actually 18 years ago. And we have been protecting the Chattahoochee for that amount of time. And we recently decided to expand our presence and open an office here in LaGrange.
And that's the big news. You know,
That is our big news.
You just had your grand opening, and from what I heard, it was a huge success.
I think so. We had a good time. We had a good time. It was wonderful to see the community come out and support the River Keeper. I think that speaks volumes about how important the river is to people, and meaning West Point Lake is part of the river. That's a reservoir on the river. So we had people from LaGrange, West Point, Harris County, all people in this area that were very concerned about what we were doing for the protection and advocating for fair and clean water.
Absolutely, and it shows how important this area is to the Upper Chattahoochee River Keepers by opening an office here.
Absolutely. It's been on our plan for years to get an office open here. It's just when you're a nonprofit environmental group with a certain amount of people on staff, it takes a little while through fundraising and development to get your, but we've been working in this area for some time already with staff members in Atlanta, and even our headwaters person, Bonnie Putney, comes down and does rain barrel workshops down. So we've had people all the way from Lake Lanier coming down and working in this area, so it's wonderful that now we've been able to realize that dream that's been on the table for several years. And my office is open, and I would love to have some visitors.
Absolutely, and your mission is very important to this area. How is it relevant to the people watching this show, and West Point Lake specifically?
Sure. Well, our mission is to look after clean water and to help provide plenty of it. So you can't have clean drinking water. The City of LaGrange would have to clean their water a whole lot more. We participated in a lawsuit with the City of Atlanta in the 1990s to clean up the water that was flowing untreated. Millions and millions of gallons of water was flowing from the City of Atlanta down into the downstream region. So in that perspective, first you start talking about clean water, because you can't do fish and drink and recreation. I mean, it all starts with a clean water resource.
Absolutely.
And so no one ever likes to get into that situation, but that is sort of we stopped all of that sewage. We were the main leader of that lawsuit that stopped all of that sewage from coming down into the downstream area. And so that I think it would be very relevant to people here. And we continue to work upstream to make sure that what's coming downstream is clean and meets the levels of standards that this community has agreed on is acceptable. And that is a non-stop job. 24-hour job to make sure that that happens. As many people that love the river and want to protect the river, there are people that don't concern themselves with the damage that can be done to the river for various causes or uses on the river.
Yes, sometimes people don't really recognize the intrinsic value, the non-dollar sign value that this place has for it. We want to preserve and provide a beautiful river for generations to come. And here at West Point Lake and the area around it, I think is some of the most beautiful riverfront, lakefront areas in the entire country. And that's why groups like the Upper Chattahoochee Riverkeepers are so important in this area.
Yes, and we understand that people's livelihoods and the economics of the river and the lake. And if you don't have a clean lake, then the fishing guys have a hard time earning a living, and so people don't want to come for tourism to visit the lake. So what we're doing is supporting all of these different aspects of the recreation, the tourism, the fishing guides. Those are people's livelihoods. That's their jobs that depend on that water supply being clean and plentiful.
Absolutely. And one of the best ways to get people involved with the river or the lake is to get people out to see what we have to offer. And I know that you guys are putting on some events and have some ideas of some events coming up that'll bring people to the area.
That's right. We do a couple of things throughout the year. We have events throughout the year on the river. Some are in Atlanta. We now have some in this area. We have one coming up in Franklin on October the 22nd. We have a paddle trip, and that actually is going to be an overnight camping trip. So I hear that that's a really beautiful area, and that's one of the really fun places that everybody loves. It's been a popular spot. That one may even be filled up, but that's a popular one. And then we'll be adding a few more paddle trips to our schedule next year now that we have an office open in this area and I'm here. We want more people in this area to come out, and would love to plan some a little bit further downstream, maybe over in Harris County or over on the other side of the dam, because people really want to get out. And then we would love to have some activities out on West Point Lake here in LaGrange in the Troup County area. We're talking about possibly doing a family cookout, an evening that's a fundraiser and family cookout where we would watch movies and have dinner with families out on the lake, and maybe go kayaking on Saturday morning. So if we have enough interest in that and people want to do that, then that's something that we would love to plan into our schedule. So we support any activities that are going on. Tracy just mentioned about the adventure race that they do in West Point. We would participate in that and help support that. We will help support the West Point Lake Coalition with their cleanups and things like that. And as you and I discussed, we have a cleanup coming up. We also do cleanups. We do fun recreational activities, but we also do some lake monitoring, kayaking, and we do have a cleanup coming up that we schedule into our calendar, and that one is at the end of September.
Yeah, and the big thing is once people get out here and they see what we have, then they're gonna feel more connected to. They're gonna see how beautiful the area is, and maybe that'll build up that want to keep it clean and beautiful for years to come. And none of the things that you mentioned can be possible without volunteers and members to your group. What are some things what can people do to become a member? I mean, how can they get more involved, I guess I should say?
We would love to have some new members in this area. They can reach out to me on our website, www.chattahoochee.org. I usually send people there first because it is a great website that walks you through our mission and all the work we do, and there's relevant information on there to this region as well. It's not just in Atlanta, it's the whole watershed of what we do. My contact information is on that, but it's a great opportunity to see what we are doing throughout our mission in the watershed. And you also can sign up for our e-blast, which is our e-newsletter that comes out, and that's a great way for us monthly to just connect with the people that are out on the river and out on the lake, to keep them current on any water related issues that we might be reporting on. But we will be doing a membership drive this fall. We are still looking for interns. We need a couple of interns to help support my outreach work here. That can be marketing type of work, that can be science, biology type of majors, political science majors, any of those would be welcome as far as internships. And you can reach me, that's the best way, is on the website. But I usually like people to go there first. But my office is at 35 Lafayette on the square downtown under the blue awning.
Okay.
So I would love people to stop in as well. But if I'm in the office all the time, that means I'm not doing my job. So check me out, call me, either way on the website.
Yeah, and that's what the office is there for.
That's
at
right.
the same time, you know, and you want to, and maybe once, if you can get some interns, then you'll be able to spend more time
That's
out
why
at
some
the lake and
interns
on
in
the
there.
river.
Yes,
Yeah.
we have all the current information, media information, any updated current water relevant information to this area. We are an authority on the water in this area, so I get lots of information all throughout the watershed, and I would have all of that available in the office if people want to stop by. I try to keep up on the lake levels and, you know, the latest and greatest of what's going on. If you have an event that you would like to promote that's water related on the lake or the river, we would love to promote that for you and put that up in our office.
Great. Well, Jill, you're doing a great job here in LaGrange, in the West Point
you.
area, and thank you so much for being back on the show.
Thanks
And
for
if you
asking.
have, if you want to get a hold of Jill, she'd be glad to hear from you and help out here at West Point Lake. We'll be right back in just a minute.
Hi, welcome to Whitetail Ridge Campground. My name is Dan. This is my wife, Christy. We are the smallest and most quaint campground on West Point Lake. We have 58 campsites here. All of our campsites have water and electric. We have shower houses that are nice and clean. We have laundry services. We have the best view of West Point Lake anywhere on this lake. On 4th of July weekend, off of our shoreline, you can see the best view of the fireworks from anywhere on the lake. And as you can see here, we've got life jackets that we loan out to all our guests, and all you have to do is bring ID up here. And we'd like to see everybody come here to Whitetail Ridge Campground and visit us.
Before we go, I'd like to remind you about a few events going on at West Point Lake. Amity and Holiday campgrounds are now closed for the season. Our Schaefer Herd will be closing on October 23rd, and Whitetail Ridge will be closing on November 27th. So be sure to get several more camping trips in. Also, tune in next month when our show will be coming from Special Day for Special People, which took place in October. Thank you for joining us on the West Point Lake Update. I'd like to thank our guests, Tracy Martin and Jill Sestino. I'd also like to thank LGTV for making this show possible. And as always, always remember to wear your life jacket when on the water. See you next time.